important thing to say is that there's a reception following this event just across the street in the Babbio HC. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. And thanks to Stevens for letting us use this gorgeous facility and your audio sound techs as well as the wonderful students from the Student Government Association helping us out as volunteers tonight. I also do some work with the Hoboken Museum, and we could not do our work without the Stevens students volunteering, so thanks so much. Hi, I'm Melissa Abernathy. I'm carrying on a tradition started about 12 years ago by Helen Minogue, who was the original coordinator for the Quality of Life Coalition, and who started these forums in collaboration with other groups that were active in Hoboken in the mid-2000s as a way to open up the civic process to the people and to make the candidates available to everyone. So I'm very pleased that the Quality of Life Coalition can carry on this tradition. I'll acknowledge real briefly the other members of the board who are here tonight. Eduardo Gonzalez is our timekeeper tonight. Shelby Smith is helping us sort questions. Esther Milstead and Inez Garcia-Kime couldn't be here tonight. But we're all very proud to carry on a tradition founded by the irreplaceable Helen Minogue, who is now in sunny San Diego. So for those of you here tonight and watching on video, I'd just like to very briefly point out how fortunate we all are to live in such a small city that's as dense and has as many big city problems as any city across the river, but is small enough that you can actually get to know your neighbors who are competing to serve on city council and carry out our wishes. We can attend our city council meetings, we can attend our zoning board meetings, we can live stream it from home. That was not possible 12 years ago. And you can buttonhole any of these people on the street because we all walk around the city, or bike, or scooter, and they're all accessible to you. I applaud their courage for getting up here, for doing the research, for going out and knocking on doors, for listening, and for sitting down together and trying to hammer out solutions to some very thorny problems. So really appreciate your being here. I'm also going to charge everyone here and everybody listening at home, please find at least 10 friends and neighbors and make them go out and vote. Make them watch this video, send them links to interviews in the Hudson Reporter, in Jersey Journal, Hoboken Girl, the Mommy blogs, wherever you can find interviews with the candidates. Read the interviews, watch the video, and get at least 10 of your friends out to vote, because voter turnout is the most important role you can play. So I just wanted to introduce our moderators very briefly because they're both modest. Bob Bowden is a longtime Hoboken resident, a television producer, reporter, political commentator, documentary filmmaker, and satirist. I like that last one. Yeah. Lead with that next time. All right. He's been our moderator since we started these programs, and we're sharing the stage with John Hines, who's providing video live streaming and recording services through the Hudson County View, where he is publisher. He's a Rutgers University graduate, has worked for all kinds of North Jersey publications, and has distinguished himself with his coverage of Hudson County, both civic matters and civic life. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to them to explain a little bit how the forum works, and on with the show. Thank you.
Good evening. So you may know me as the guy whose charisma reaches wide and far, your favorite rated R superstar, John Heides. Thanks for joining me tonight. I'm here with Bob Bowden. Of course, thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Beth. And thank you for everybody watching us in Facebook land. Before we get to our main event of the evening, I just want to go over some housekeeping rules. So first of all, just for our great audience tonight, just try to contain yourselves. Try not to yell out. We're really only holding any crowd reactions for the intros in the beginning and the outros at the end. So during the actual Q&A, if you could try to keep your feelings bottled inside for just a couple hours, that would be fantastic. And on top of that, just so you guys know, we're going to have 60-second intro, 60-second outro, and each answer is going to be 90 seconds. And if anybody chooses to be rebutted, that will be 30 seconds. And also, we have a 60, sorry about that. And we also, as Melissa mentioned, we have somebody keeping time. So when Eduardo holds up the yellow card candidates, that means you have 10 seconds. And of course, the red card means you'll be out of time. So that's basically it. So I think we're going to randomize and get on to our intros.
Okay. So we got the spreadsheet, everybody. You guys can see this. And 2 nights ago, I did pretty well with this. Let's see how I do this time. So just so you guys see how this works is, each time I enter a new 0, I get new random numbers here on the list. And in a second, I'm going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that'll be the official opening statement order. I'll sort, so it goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That would be the list. I come over here, highlight the rows, click Sort Now, and we see Ms. Sprengel will be first for the opening statement. And then after that, you guys can all see where you go. You don't need us announcing your names. You can just go when you naturally appear next. So, Ms. Sprengel. And again, audience responses are acceptable during opening statements.
Thank you to the QLC for hosting. Can you guys hear me? To Bob and John for moderating, and to all the residents here tonight. My name is Lisa Sprengel, and I've lived in Hoboken for the past 13 years with my husband and my daughter. We love the charm and the unique character of Hoboken, and I want to be a part of preserving that. I have no aspirations for career in politics. My only agenda is to help make my community better. The biggest issue facing the Fourth Ward is the danger of being overdeveloped, which will cause traffic, pedestrian safety, and flooding issues, which already plague our neighborhood, to be made even worse. When Academy Bus proposed a massive redevelopment project a few months ago that would have irreparably damaged our neighborhood, my opponent not only didn't speak out against it, he seemed to be in favor of it. That is why I believe it's time for a new, fresh voice to represent the residents of the Fourth Ward. Thank you.
Hi. Thanks to the QLC for organizing, and thanks to Stevens for hosting. The last time I was on this stage, I was in a 7th grade production of Our Town, and I was really nervous about having to kiss a boy in a wedding scene. I'm 4th generation Hoboken, and I'm proudly raising a 5th generation here. I'm running for office because I want to keep Hoboken moving forward, but I also want to preserve the things that keep us special. In my day job, I'm an executive producer of television series, so every day at work I manage difficult talent, come up with creative solutions to seemingly impossible problems, build consensus, and have to do all of that while paying attention to a very tight budget. So I'd like to take those skills and bring them to serve my community.
Good evening. My name is Jen Giacchino. I have called Hoboken my home for 21 years, where I've raised my 3 amazing sons, Joey, Jack, and Alex, with my incredibly loving husband, Joe. City Council is a part-time job that I treat as a full-time job. Agree with me, disagree with me, I will always be there for my constituents. Whatever your issue is, no matter the size, I will make it my issue and do whatever I can to find a solution. I have had the honor of serving you for 8 years and leading the City Council for 4 of those years as Council President. During this time, we have accomplished so much, from acquiring what is now known as the Northwest Resiliency Park to the redoing of Washington Street, and much more. Long before I was on the council, I worked hard for our reform government, an honest school board, and always advocated for my neighbors. I have always been involved. I am and always will be committed to our home, Hoboken.
I'm Nora Martinez Dibenedetto, and last time I was on this stage was my 8th grade graduation. So the room seems a little bit smaller now. I don't know. As many of you know, I was born and raised right here in Hoboken, born and raised in the 2nd Ward. I've lived there my entire life. My husband and I actually grew up on the same block, and we are thrilled to be raising our young son, Otis, in the neighborhood that is so dear to us. That tiny slice of the world is just the most important place to me. I'm running for City Council because I believe that the 2nd Ward has been left behind in terms of pedestrian safety, community space, and public transportation. I have always been an advocate for the issues most important to Hoboken, from rent control to an accessible waterfront, and I'm not stopping now. Thank you so much.
Hi. I didn't come here to graduate when I was in 8th grade. I'm Councilwoman Tiffany Fisher for the 2nd Ward. I moved to Hoboken 25 years ago, and I've called the Hudson T building in the 2nd Ward my home for the last 19. I have an MBA. I've spent 3 years on Hoboken's planning and zoning boards, and I have a 22-year career in finance and commercial real estate, most recently as a CFO of a large real estate company. With the threat of overdevelopment and rising taxes having the biggest impact on the quality of all of our lives, from affordability to crowded streets to pedestrian safety, I leverage my professional experience every day to find solutions for every issue. My path to public service began in 2011 when I joined Hoboken's long lineage of waterfront advocates and led our community's fight against the Monarch Project. I was hooked, and I never looked back. In the past 4 years, we've accomplished a lot together, from fixing Washington Street to saving taxpayers over $30 million with a new Suez water contract that put us on a path to ending water main breaks. This is a part-time role that I love fulfilling on a full-time basis, and I'm hopeful to have your support on November 5th so I can keep engaging with, informing, and advocating for you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Frank Rosner. I'm running for the 6th Ward. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody involved in putting this together, especially the QLC people, and thank you for coming out. I'm a 40-year resident of Hoboken. Raised my daughters here. They weren't born and bred. One was born in Mount Sinai, the other one in Hackensack, but they were bred here. Again, 40 years. I've been under the radar. I'm most proud of co-founding a charter school, the Elysian Charter School on 14th Street, served on its board, re-elected twice. And I think it's time to step out from under the radar. I've been involved for at least 35 years. My wife and daughter are here. I love them very much. In fact, my wife and I have been together exactly 40 years since we came to Hoboken. I also want to wish kudos to everyone on this stage, as well as Tuesday nights. Any candidate, any person willing to come forward and put themselves forward like this is nothing but courageous to be able to get the wrath of the public.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming this evening. My name is Ruben Ramos Jr., born and raised in Hoboken, proudly married to my wife, Nora, raising 2 children in town. What I want to talk about tonight is what I've done the last 4 years. When I started running 4 years ago, I had a list of things I wanted to accomplish. And that was to renegotiate the Suez water deal, which we've successfully done, where the city's now going to make money off of that deal. It's going right into the residents' pockets. Opening the new Southwest Park was a huge goal of ours, as well as now the state legislature creating the Infrastructure Trust Fund, which helped fund that park for all of our Hoboken residents. We paved roads throughout the 4th Ward. We created a new traffic pattern in the 4th Ward that opened up Jackson Street and put new pedestrian safety traffic signals and stop signs throughout the ward. We have new play equipment in Madison Street Park, Jackson Street Park, soon to be Jefferson Street Park, and again, resurfacing of the roller rink. As we went forward throughout 2 huge accomplishments that just happened very recently. We have new traffic signal security cameras that can gauge when traffic is coming and flowing through Patterson Plank Road to help flow traffic throughout that ward and throughout our neighborhood. So now, as we go forward in the debate tonight, I want to talk about what we're going to do for the next 4 years in our times. I'm really proud of what we accomplished the last 4 years. Thank you very much.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, Mr. Rosner.
All right, so just like on Tuesday, we have quite a few questions already talking about fiscal responsibility, so this sounds like a fun one to start with. What would you do to stand up to the county when it comes to our tax bill and their wasteful spending?
There's been a lot of wasteful spending, in my opinion. First of all, we really need to get more back from the county than we put into the county. I know there's a bunch of county roads. I live on Willow. I can't remember the last time it was paved. I commute every day to New York. I talk to everyone on the bus. Some of those roads, especially even Clinton, it's miserable. I mean, I'm surprised the riders don't all have kidney stones. It's pretty much kind of a roller coaster ride. So that's a priority for me. Infrastructure is a priority for me. There must be a way to get funding from the county more back to the city than we give in to the county.
So I've spent a lot of time looking at the county budget for the last 4 years. I'm the chair of the Finance and Infrastructure Subcommittee for Hoboken, and we get this question a lot: why are our county taxes so high? And it's a function of the wasteful or significant spending and somewhat wasteful spending within the county. But it's also it's incredibly complicated as well. The county budget includes a significant amount of state funding, and so under Governor Christie, for example, all of the state funding was significantly reduced, and that was passed through to the municipalities. So it's pretty complicated, and I think a big issue, as Frank just mentioned, is we need to figure out a way to get them to contribute more into Hoboken. We have more streets than any other county in terms of paving and snow plowing, but we should ask them to do more. We should ask them to take care of the best kept park in the city of Hoboken is Columbus Park. We should ask them to expand their reach and coverage of the additional parks in Hoboken. I think everyone in the second ward, has been very frustrated that Elysian Park has not, is kind of falling in disrepair in a lot of areas, and Elysian is a perfect kind of park to get more contributions from the county. So I am happy. I've sat down with our freeholder Romano. I've sat down with the controller of the county and have gone through their numbers. I know that they take a very careful approach, but I'm happy to sit down and continue that advocacy and do what we can to cut more spending.
Hi. I would like to talk to the county about getting additional resources for specific things. The things that I would like to get additional resources for would be for streets, for our parks, including the new parks that are set to open where the Union Dry Dock space is, and I would also like to tap them for additional housing vouchers to help us house our homeless population.
Okay, I would also like to explore why Hoboken is paying the largest share of county taxes to Hudson County and review the recourses we have in return. I would, of course, love to get more resources from the county, more, as Krista mentioned, great idea, more affordable housing vouchers. I also think we could get more services for our seniors. And I think that they need to contribute more to Hoboken. Right outside of my apartment is a giant pothole on Patterson Avenue, and every time the trucks go down Patterson Avenue, our building shakes. So I'd like to see them do a little bit more. However, I am aware of the fact that our taxes are based on a formula. So what I would like to do is work with the freeholder and Jersey City and ask that they do a reval of their property values. So if they were to get their property values reevaluated, they could potentially, pay more in taxes, which would offset Hoboken's taxes. So I know that that's quite a difficult issue, but I think that's a real long-term fix.
So I've worked really hard over the past 8 years to develop a relationship with the county, and I do advocate for a lot. You'll be happy to know that Willow is being repaved next year after working with our freeholder and the county. This is happening. They're also going to restudy and make sure all the corners are as safe as they possibly can be. They're going to revisit which corners should have stop signs. And I did ask for bump outs, but bump outs were not an option because of the ambulances, and that's an emergency route. I advocated last year for $250,000 for the dog runs in Church Square Park and Stevens Park to be redone, which the county is paying for. I advocated for them to give money to the Northwest Resiliency Park, which they did. 6 years ago, I advocated for them to give money to the Southwest Park, which they did. I just think it takes a good advocate to get the county to listen, and I have done that continuously over 8 years.
Hoboken wants a pool. There used to be one in Columbus Park. We should work with the county to make that happen again. There you go.
No applause. Hold your applause.
This is a private venue, please.
Thank you. We have to maximize our partnerships, and I think over the last 4 years, we've done a pretty good job maximizing those partnerships in the Fourth Ward. All of First Street has been repaved. All of Newark Street has been repaved. All of Observer Highway has been repaved, including new traffic signals on Patterson Plank Road that the county helped fund, and the traffic signal on Madison Street, which the county helped fund as well. They've also helped fund the Southwest Park Initiative. They helped fund the vouchers for the senior citizens, not the senior citizen building, the Veterans Housing Building. They funded those 6 vouchers as well. They do fund a program that funds our seniors transportation for doctor's visits as well. So we have to maximize those partnerships. We did that the last 4 years. We're going to continue those partnerships going forward the next 4 years. We can't rely on Jersey City doing another reval, because they just did one a year ago. And as revals go, they can't do one for another 9 years. That's a real non-starter as far as that point goes. What we can do going forward, I think, is something they can do for our streets here, is Observer Highway is a county road. They patrol Congress Street. The sheriffs do, to control traffic in that neighborhood. For people going from the light rail station across Congress Street, they could do that on Observer Highway and help our traffic flow a lot better doing that as well. It's something they can do immediately and right now without exasperating any more services from our county. Thank you.
All right, any rebuttals from our candidates? Yes.
Hi, I did want to just add a couple things. I would agree with Councilman Giacchino and Ramos that it really is about partnership and having a good relationship with the county, which for a number of years hasn't been the case with the administration. I can tell you I actually do similarly have a good relationship with them. We've recently met and reviewed all of the county intersections in the 2nd Ward. Probably the most important one is the corner of Willow and 14th. We advocated to remove the parking spots along Trader Joe's and to put vertical delineators in Willow Street to avoid left-hand turns in and out of the parking lot at Trader Joe's, which is causing a lot of issues. The city, we also led the effort for the county to review that entire intersection, including the viaduct, which they're in the process of reviewing right now. And so I agree with Councilman Ramos that one thing that would be great is to have a Hudson County Sheriff to come and actually enforce on a number of our streets, in particular near Pier 13 on Sinatra. Thanks.
Okay, anybody else?
I just wanted to say I agree with Ms. Dibenedetto, but not just on the pool. I know that the YMCA is being considered for their pool renovation. I know there's a pool up here at Stevens, which we've utilized during the years. And I also think that there's much more recreational facilities needed for our town. That's number one. Number two, the funding, it could be private funding, public-private, county, us, wherever the money comes from, we should investigate any avenue and any source to obtain funding, period.
Thanks, Frank. Anyone else on this one? Okay, great. Here's Bob.
All right, everybody. So, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So Ms. Sprengel will be first on this. And so we're departing a little bit from the plan, which was that we're going to try to work on as many different questions as possible from 2 nights ago. But we are changing that because we've received so many questions about one issue. We're going to repeat this question, which is about the Lime scooters. People are talking about it. Some people love them. Some people hate them. I'm not going to frame the positive or negative in each of these cards, but there's one other card I wanted to read. How did you arrive tonight? Did you walk, bike, scoot, drive, or be driven? And I'd be delighted if someone said, yes, my personal chauffeur is waiting outside. At any rate, so how did you get here tonight, and your thoughts on the Lime scooter as we begin with Ms. Sprengel?
So I walked tonight. That was my usual mode of transportation until about 2 months ago, when unfortunately I had to get a car for work. I am in support of the scooter program. I believe that in the 4th Ward, it helps reduce traffic and provides an alternative means of transportation for us in that corner. In general, I think pilot programs are a great way to provide the community, the police, our government, a chance to learn, observe, us residents, and determine if a program provides a needed benefit and solves an existing solution to a problem before we enter into a long-term contract. I think that it's essential that we get this right before we renew the program in November. And I think that if going forward, it's imperative that pedestrian safety come first. So I am in support of the program with hesitation. I was encouraged to see that we now have they've renegotiated the contract, which I was encouraged that Lime was willing to do that. And also with regard to the increased revenue, we were able to now have 2, I believe they're called micro enforcement officers. So they say that police presence acts as a deterrent. I think in this case, before we even get to deterrent, we need them to actually enforce some of these rules. So I'm encouraged by that, and I'm interested to see how it moves forward.
Anyone who's ever talked to me for more than 5 minutes knows that I love the hop, and that's how I came here tonight. Red hop. My man Manny was driving me. So as far as the scooters go, pedestrian safety is my #1 priority. I have been cautiously optimistic about the scooter plan and program. I think that I'm glad that the Ojos were discontinued. I think that Lime has been working a lot better with the city. To date, they've already gotten rid of more than 500 different accounts of people who have been scooting illegally, and I think that that's great. The micro-mobility officers, I think, are a really fantastic addition to this solution, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's happening. I think they just started last week, so I want to love it, and, as the mom to a 3-year-old, it's a little bit scary to me, but I think that anything that's not a car should be given a fair shot, so.
I voted in favor of the pilot program, and the reason why, I think when you have some new technology, it's to give it an opportunity, bring the data in, analyze the data, and see where we go from here. And a couple of things that were concerning about the data was a lack of enforcement. So until we figure out a way to enforce the Lime scooting program a lot better than we are today, I think we have to revisit that, and that's analyzing the data for enforcement. Secondly, we have to look at a parking situation for the scooters. The scooters cannot end up in front of people's stoops, in front of the walkways in front of their home, at crosswalks. We have to try and figure out where the scooters are going to be left long term. As far as going forward in the future, I think we may take a little break for a time period to analyze this data and then continue it so everyone feels that the enforcement is up to par and when it can actually be done. Because let's face it, the first couple of weeks of that program, the first couple of months of that program, not much was happening. And we want to see everyone walking across the street safe. Pedestrian safety is a huge issue. When I was in the state legislature, I passed a number of bills that enforce pedestrian safety throughout the city. That's why you see those stop signs for cross pedestrians all over the state of New Jersey. That was a bill that I sponsored, got to the legislature, and the governor signed that legislation to try and make everyone safe as possible. That's why we don't have corners parking 15 feet within our crosswalks in the city of Hoboken, not the state of New Jersey, because pedestrian safety is a huge priority, but we have to try and figure this program out. When I talk to residents in the 4th Ward, it eliminates 12 minutes from their commute when they're going from 4th and Jackson to the PATH station. When you add that up over a week's time, that's significant time savings. And time is one thing we can't get back in our lives. So that's a huge savings for people. So I'll be in favor of it. Long term, as long as we get enforcement correct.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
I am for any mode of transport for such a city as this size, with caveats. The enforcement of the law, and in fact, as my family will attest to, about 6-7 weeks ago I had mentioned, I said, why don't we just get some people on the street? We hired 2 enforcement officers for the e-scooters. We'll get the revenue from Lime, and at no cost to taxpayers. Lo and behold. And by the way, to Bob's preface to the first question, I was transported here by angels.
My answer. I walk.
By walk.
That's me. Yeah. So I came here by Uber tonight because I was in a rush and I wanted to make sure I was on time. I did share with someone, so we saved a little bit of energy. Listen, I voted yes for this. We were given a lot of promises on the dais that night that the city was going to have both an educational and enforcement plan, and they didn't. The scooters was not my issue until 2 days into it when a Lime representative called me and said, how are things going? And I screeched, how could we possibly have 11-year-olds on scooters in Hoboken? From that day on, I've become the only voice on scooters. I'm behind I've sponsored every single safety action and improvement to the contract, including the increased revenue, including slowing down on the waterfront, including banning on the upper and lower waterfronts, and including demanding that we have a requirement for IDs so children don't get on our scooters. I absolutely think that we need to do as much as we can to expand transportation sources in Hoboken. There's a lot of people that really like these scooters, but I believe in order for them to work in Hoboken, they have to be safe, and they are currently not safe. I met with Lime just 2 days ago. They talked to me about their plans for the winter. They've successfully rolled out or had scooter programs in snowy areas similar to ours. I personally am really struggling to understand small wheels / dark nights and drunk people. As of right now, without seeing the plan, I will recommend not to continue the program through the winter, but I'm open to what they put in front of us. Thanks.
I am not anti-scooter, but I did vote no on this exactly for the reason that everyone up here is talking about. There was no enforcement plan prior to us allowing 300 scooters on the streets of Hoboken. I had suggested maybe limiting the number, maybe just doing a certain area of Hoboken, but the administration said it's 300 or none, so the council voted on that, which I did not vote for. And maybe the reason I knew what was going to happen is that I do have 3 teenage boys, and I was just imagining my 3 teenage boys times 10,000 around Hoboken, and I just saw a complete disaster. Some things that, if we do have a new contract with Lime, everyone talks about how green they are. They actually charge their scooters in Secaucus. They take them there by van. What I'd really like to see is them having a partnership with our local businesses that are struggling so much and have them charge them in our local businesses at night. There is one business in Hoboken that does it. This way we're not driving fleets of vans back and forth, or they're not, fleets of vans back and forth to Secaucus. They're actually just walking them to storefronts in Hoboken that would benefit from the revenue.
I think it's important to workshop micromobility to try to decrease the amount of car traffic in town. So I am for trying things like the e-scooter program. I think that if this is going to move forward, though, and be renewed, that we have to enforce the rules. 2 things that I think would have made the rollout a lot better are protected bike lanes that would have kept scooters off sidewalks. One thing that is a recurrent issue at the doors is I have a neighbor who is in a wheelchair, and people park them in crosswalks, they park them across sidewalks, and it makes it incredibly difficult for people, for pedestrians to maneuver, especially pedestrians who have mobility issues to begin with. I think that designated parking areas for scooters are absolute must if we are going to continue the program. I've noticed that at the doors, people either love Lime scooters or they hate Lime scooters, and I really wish that the residents of Hoboken had been able to vote on this in November, but the council blocked a non-binding referendum on the matter.
All right, I believe that's all. So now rebuttal time. Anyone? Go ahead.
Hi, just a couple quick things. In response to the comment about the non-binding referendum, there's a lot of ways that we get feedback from residents all the time, and as a council person, what the newly elected, potentially newly elected council members are going to have to realize is that we are elected to make decisions, to get input from people, and make decisions on, tough issues all the time. We didn't put a referendum on the ballot for something like $100 million park in Northwest Hoboken that impacts every single taxpayer, significantly impacts every single taxpayer. And so the idea that we were going to put a vote on a transportation issue just to get feedback just made absolutely no sense to us, or to me, I can tell you. The one thing I would say about this program is when it was originally rolled out, one of the things that we see from this administration is a race to be first, right? We were the first city in the state of New Jersey to have a scooter program immediately following the change in the state law. Instead of focusing on what's best for Hoboken, what's right for Hoboken, a little bit of research would have gone a long way, and we would have had a much better rollout, a much more successful program, and we would have understood the needs of the community. And I think before we do a rollout in the spring, that we take the time off to re-roll this out in the spring and have it be right for Hoboken.
Anyone else on rebuttals? All right, seeing none. We'll go to the next ordering. I would have thought Mr. Rosner's brought here by Angel's claim would have elicited a rebuttal, but it is not to be. 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, and here's John.
All right, so switching subjects here. This question says, if elected, what would you do to enforce and potentially strengthen the city's rent control laws to protect our renters?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah. If elected, what would you do to enforce or potentially strengthen the city's rent control rules for the tenants in the city?
This question is very personal and important to me. My husband and I are both teachers, and the only reason why we can still afford to live in Hoboken is because we have a rent control department. A couple of times my landlord tried to raise our rent. It was illegal. I went to City Hall. I used the services there, and that was how I found out. So for me, protecting rent control is very important. I support Councilwoman Falco's ordinance, which raises the minimum mandate for developers from 10% to 15% in new developments. And I also would support expanding the tenant advocate hours. Thank you.
Thank you. I think one of the things we have to do ourselves is educate our residents what their rights are. That's first of all. And I think a lot of times when the landlord comes knocking on their door, they panic and they automatically, give in to what the landlord's wishes are. If we do a better job on our end as administration, as a city council, to have them understand what their rights are, to come to City Hall, to reach out, we can help advocate for them on a lot better basis going forward. I supported Councilwoman Falco's ordinance to increase it from 10% to 15% for developer give back, trying to protect our affordable housing rates in town. We're also advocating for new senior citizen development in town to help fight displacement. We held senior affordable housing meetings in the multi-service center for an entire year, every month for an entire year, to engage the community as what our needs are in a rent control affordable housing basis going forward. We collected that data and we identified our needs as being senior housing and preventing displacement as one of our huge priorities. That's what we're going to focus on the next 4 years, is where we're going to put on senior housing and for those residents being displaced to find housing for them in senior citizen buildings throughout the city. Thank you.
This one's an easy one. I am 100% unequivocally behind rent control. This city needs to be and remain a diversified city. It needs to have all socioeconomic levels. That's what makes this town great. That's why I first moved here. I wasn't rich, and I'm not rich now when I first came to the town. But this absolutely has to be maintained. I'm unequivocally behind it, supporting it. In fact, here's another one I had mentioned a while ago. Why don't we negotiate 20% on the affordable housing with the developers and settle for 15? It's all a negotiation process, but it has to be done. 100% agreed.
I also am in full support of the rent control. I think that we do need to maintain our socio and cultural diversity in Hoboken. We have to allow for our teachers, our seniors in particular, to be able to afford Hoboken and stay in Hoboken. I think that we need to enforce the existing laws, and I also think that we have to inform our residents of their rights. I support tracking and taking inventory of the current stock of affordable housing units so that we know where the needs are. If there's a need for studios, if there's a special need for seniors, we can address that. I think we need to take back up a little and take a more holistic approach to that by taking inventory and giving more expanded hours and services to people. I also support Councilwoman's ordinance to increase from 10 to 15%. And I like Larry's idea. I think we should start out negotiating much higher and then end up somewhere lower. Thank you.
This is one of the main reasons I'm running for office. I want to protect rent control and strengthen our rent control laws, but I also think that we need to think bigger about affordable housing in Hoboken, looking at what is working in other cities around the country and around the world. If you look at Boston, Massachusetts, and Arlington, Virginia, they each have a commercial linkage fee in place that charges developers of commercial properties dollar amount per square foot. That money, and in both Arlington and Boston, has generated millions of dollars over the course of years, goes into a community land trust or affordable housing trust, and that money is used to purchase existing housing stock as well as to build purpose-built affordable housing, not just in one area of Hoboken, but mixed throughout the city. Preserving our socioeconomic diversity is key to keeping Hoboken, Hoboken.
We're a victim of our own success to some degree, which is everyone loves living in Hoboken, and as a result, we have tremendous market pressures and increases in property values, right? And the biggest threat to the diversity within our community is developers developing what is most profitable for them, which is more luxury residential. And so we need to, as a government, has to step in when the market pressures aren't aligned necessarily with the goals of the community. So I'm 100% supportive of enforcing our rent control. Jersey City just did a full audit of their rent control files. Ours are not automated. They're zero transparency. They're paper files. And what we need to do is we need to do a full audit, and we need to move the information so that there's standardization and more transparency around them. One of the other things that I have the YMCA in the second ward, and this is 96 single resident occupancy units, and every time I've spoken with the men that live there, they always say they wish there was a centralized location to find information about affordable options in Hoboken or even Hudson County, and it's never been a priority of either the last administration or this administration to put that information on a website, even though we've spoken about it. So the one thing I would say is I've been on the Affordable Housing Subcommittee for all 4 years. I'm a huge fan of the efforts that Councilman Falco led to make significant changes to our affordable housing, and I'm excited to see even more of that. Thank you.
Our website, our city's website, does not have a page that explains rent control. There should be a cheat sheet on our city's website explaining rent control. When I was first elected, rent control was not on my radar, and very quickly I came to learn not that all landlords are predatory, but we do have a lot of predatory landlords in this town. And I have probably helped more residents that were in jeopardy of losing their apartment, their rent-controlled apartment, than any other council person, for no other reason that I just fell into it, and now anyone in the city of Hoboken who is having a rent control issue, if they're not calling someone who's not on the council, they're calling me. About a year ago, and it's probably one of my favorite stories about being on the council, there was a predatory landlord trying to evict a tenant who's been in her apartment for over 30 years. And after speaking to her and talking with the DCA, I actually recommended that she did not use the tenant advocate through the city, because I was concerned that they weren't going to fight hard enough or possibly tell her to settle. And speaking to the DCA and a few attorneys, she now owns her apartment. The things the landlord were doing were so wrong. The best thing he could do was to sell it to her at the price that he bought it. So because of that, and me stepping in, a woman went from a tenant to an owner. Thank you.
All right, anyone want to follow up? Yes.
Just a quick comment about public and private, whether it's landlords or not. I used to park on the municipal lot on 2nd Street in Willow, where now we have 6 homeless veterans housing. And actually, that is going to be extended out now with funding for another 15 units, I believe. And it's fine. I can give up that parking space. The reason I'm here is because of those veterans. So that's not a problem. However, there's a building across from me, and again, public example. That private building went up in 8 months. The homeless veterans, 2.5 years. We need to investigate how to expedite that process for funding.
Currently, the Hoboken Housing Authority is looking at expanding their residences and getting RAD funding, which will help protect all existing residents and create new housing opportunities for newer residents in affordable housing. Is everyone hear what I'm saying? For new affordable housing for Hoboken Housing Authority residents. So when that vote comes up, I hear everyone at this table tonight said, I'm in favor of affordable housing, in favor of affordable housing, in favor of affordable housing. So that's coming up in the very near future, when the housing authority is going for their RAD funding, they need city council's help and support to apply for those applications in Washington, D.C. Everyone on this dais, everyone in city council better step up to the plate, because we cannot allow our Hoboken Housing Authority residents to live in those conditions any further. I see Aaron Hewitt tonight. You're my partner in this. You're my partner going forward in this. We're going to make that happen for our residents. Thank you.
I did just want to add about rent control. Rent control is really unique in that it naturally keeps Hoboken's economically diverse people living in the same neighborhood. Oftentimes with affordable housing, the affordable housing all goes into one section of town, and it isolates people of different income. It's very important to me that when building affordable housing, it's everywhere in Hoboken. It's not just in one location.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, Bob?
All right, we're having some fun now, huh? All right, moving along. It's going to be with the even ward. No, you're my brother, and I'm an even ward person, too. I was here 2 nights ago with those odd-numbered ward people. Those people are nuts. All right.
Oh, that's funny.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Just about at halftime, I think, everybody. The new sort will be Mr. Rosner first. We have a number of questions on the concept of historic preservation, and without biasing the questions, some people are support more buildings being given the designation, the status of historically preserved buildings. Other people feel that some buildings are out of date or energy inefficient or no longer for the use they were built in. There are too many that are given that status. So the general question being historic preservation, Mr. Rosner.
Historic preservation in Hoboken specifically needs to be addressed, needs to be maintained. If you look uptown, that's a city into itself, which is also a density issue. But as far as preservation, when you buy a brownstone, or if you're going to redo the interior of your apartment, condo, whatever it is, all well and good. But the exterior, it really needs to map itself with the neighborhood. There's some buildings on Park, and there's some buildings that I've seen, totally out of place for that street. We need to preserve that edifice for this town.
This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because my late mother, Nancy, was the vice chair of the Historic Preservation Commission before her death, and really instilled in us a love of preserving and honoring our history in Hoboken. My goal, the historic districts in Hoboken haven't been expanded since 1979. I want to follow the recommendation of the master plan and expand the historic district to include all of Hoboken. I would also like to point out that there is currently a bill to protect our historic district on Hudson Street and the surrounding area, Bill B-191. This legislation is favored by the Historic Preservation Commission. It was unanimously agreed upon by the Planning Board, and now it's being, I'm not sure what the status of it is now. If I were on the council, I would follow the recommendation of the Historic Preservation Commission and the master plan and vote to protect that entire district.
Okay, I am in favor of historic preservation. I do think it's something that needs to be addressed in Hoboken. I think Hoboken has a lot of history, and much of that brings to life the charm of the city. We need to invest to protect the character of our city and make sure that its history is not lost. I think Hoboken's history needs to remain a part of its future. And I'd like to give credit to the members of the Historic Preservation that work tirelessly to keep Hoboken, Hoboken.
Ms. Fisher.
My apologies. So one of the first, actually before I was on the council, I was on the zoning board, and always questioned why the Historic Preservation Commission just didn't seem to have as big of a presence in zoning applications as we'd want them to be. There was lots of applications that recommended tear downs, and I actually came out and spoke against a ordinance that was being approved at the council that was removing a story limitation within our R1 districts. For those of you that may not follow, we had a story restriction that said you can't build more than 3 stories in our residential areas. We removed that, and ultimately what that did is it incentivized developers to tear down and be able to build an extra floor within 40 feet. I spoke up that night and said this is going to be an incentive to tear down, and it's in fact what happened. And so on the council, Councilman Giacchino and Councilman Doyle actually put the story back in to stop demolitions. But along the way, when I first was on the council, 2 local historians, Paul Somerville and Alan Kratz, who supported me at the time, said we need more money for the Historic Preservation Commission. I asked them how much. They had a very small budget of around $12,000. They didn't give me a budget. A year later, I had the same conversation. They still didn't give me a budget. But a year later, I finally grabbed them, actually different people, by the neck and said, how much do you need? They said, we need money. We need $100,000 to be able to do design guidelines. That is what will make a difference in the Historic Preservation Commission. 2 years ago, we approved $56,000. This year, $56 more. And now I'd like to think that a lot of the successes are because they're a better funded commission. Thank you.
To those of us who live in the 6th Ward, we are uniquely privileged to live in probably the smallest scale, with the smallest scale buildings in all of Hoboken. And the thing that's so magical about it is you walk down the street and you have a connection between you and the building, if it's someone sitting on their stoop or you're looking into their living room or kitchen. But it really creates a neighborhood, having that contact, that connection with the sidewalk and the building. It's one of the reasons in R1 that driveways aren't allowed. You lose that when that happens. I am completely in favor of historic preservation. The council will be voting on November 2nd on second reading. I'm sorry, not second, November 6th for the expansion of the historic districts. Like Councilwoman Fisher said, I was the one who, with Councilman Doyle, that supported changing the law back from 40 feet and no stories to 40 feet and 3 stories. If there's any way I can help protect historic preservation in Hoboken, I will.
Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you. I'm also in favor of historic preservation. We have the ordinance before us, but one of the caveats that I helped with the ordinance was making sure that all the homeowners were notified that their home was going to be in the historic preservation district. They didn't know that prior, but now they'll receive notice of that going forward. I'm also happy to work with Councilwoman Fisher on the budget committee that year, where we put in $56,000 in the budget that was 0 to 56. We went to everyone, what did they need, and we made it happen. Without that, there'll be no ordinance before us today to help make this happen, to protect all those homes within the city of Hoboken.
I'm in favor of historic preservation and following the master plan. I thank dedicated members like John Vesey and Alan Kratz for the hard work that they do on the Historic Preservation Commission. I also have concerns about, the facades of historic brownstones being replaced by metal and blowing out the backs of them, and it's a little concerning to me. I want to make sure that the charm of Hoboken remains intact.
Okay, I think that's all. Rebuttals now on the historic preservation. All right, seeing none, I'll do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Aren't you guys impressed? I finally figured out how to get this working right after all these years. Ms. Martinez Dibenedetto will be first. Here's John.
All right, so it's not unusual for us to hear candidates or dignitaries say that they support smart development. So on this question, a bunch of people in the audience want to know, do you currently support this version of the Hoboken Rail Yard redevelopment plan? Why or why not?
I believe that the rail yard project missed an opportunity for robust public comment leading up to it. Now, whose fault it was, there's a lot of blame going around about that, but the bottom line is that we missed an opportunity until the last minute. So I think that it's important that in the future, there's more public input. I'm not in favor of development that is out of scale for Hoboken, but at this point, we've been talking about this project for 15 years, and we need to get a shovel in the ground. Rebuild by design is a huge concern of mine. Don't forget, 80% of Hoboken was underwater. We need to start that project, and we need to start it immediately. And the bottom line is that if we don't get it started very soon, then the federal government could claw back that money, and that's something that we really don't want to see happen. So we need to make sure that we get some smart development happening in that area soon.
So I'm going to take a slightly more bold approach. I was sitting next to Mayor Bala at the planning board, which I'm sitting on right now for a year. First time he's been sitting on the planning board in place of Councilman Doyle, who was not there that night, as he basically tried to sell the planning board and the community on the rail yards development. This is not a back and forth finger pointing. This was a development that was shepherded through City Hall with no interest in having any public input whatsoever. And just so you know how it works, notwithstanding we may be the redevelopment authority, the city council, per the mayor, that just means that we vote. We do not direct the resources of the city. The community development director had been working very closely with the developer for the last several months. And you know how we know that? Because we had a meeting with him 2 months ago where he mentioned it to us. So this is a huge, huge project for the city of Hoboken. It doesn't address the needs that were identified during the last very public process, which is we need to have commercial development, not only broadly for the city, but in that area in particular. So although I am absolutely supportive of moving forward with development at the site, we need to make sure it works for Hoboken more than it working for the developer. And so I think it's disingenuous for anyone to say that it was anyone else's fault. We are in this situation now because the administration did not want public input on the most important project that our city is facing.
Just to explain what that means, the mayor was on the planning board. The mayor has a designee on the planning board, and if he wishes for whatever reason, one of them may be that his designee doesn't agree with the project, the mayor can then sit on the planning board for that meeting, which our mayor did, and voted yes. I have a lot of problems with this plan. I am 100% for commercial development. Hoboken is in desperate need of commercial development that will bring a daytime community to Hoboken, that will support our small businesses, that will support our restaurants. If you walk down Washington Street on any given day during the week, there's nobody there. This development, in the amended plan, they had the commercial closest to the path and the hub, the transportation hub, which makes perfect sense. That's where you want the commercial. In the amended plan, they switched it to the back, or some in the middle, and took it away from that prime spot where you really could attract a desirable tenant that could help fill the needs that Hoboken needs, and also diversify our taxes. I was not happy at all with how this went. On the night of first reading, I actually fought for us to table it and then to have a public meeting. We had the public meeting. At the agenda meeting prior to the public meeting, I had already carried it to the November 6th meeting. This is before the public meeting happened on Tuesday. Thank you.
So I was at the meeting as well. The project feels like it was more developer-driven than community-driven, and I think that the council could have made sure that there was a robust public process that took place before a vote, and they didn't. And for me, I'm also in favor of commercial development. It is one of the prime ways that I want to fund affordable housing. I would want to look at the impacts of this very large project on traffic, on infrastructure. I also want to look at the impacts on historic preservation. Right now, there is the records office that is on that site that looks like it's slated for demolition, and that can't happen.
Councilman Ramos? Thank you. As far as the overall plan goes, we hired financial analysis, CBRE, but we have yet to see that financial analysis back. One thing that everyone wants to see is a revitalization of the terminal and the plaza outside the terminal, on Warrington Plaza. I think everyone wants to see that. However, once we see the CBRE financial analysis of what can fund to make that market happen, revitalization of the terminal, maybe new ferry slips for New York Waterway to go there as opposed to Union Dry Dock. Once we see that, we can then make our decision as to what is the proper development, size, scale, and everything else going forward at that site. But that has to be the goal. The overall goal should be the revitalization of the Hoboken terminal overall, because that is the entryway to our city. Thousands of people use that every single day. We want to support our small businesses, so we have a huge opportunity here that we do not want to miss. And I think it's vital that we keep this conversation going forward, but ultimately, we have to figure this out. It's important for our tax rateable base going on. It's important for our small businesses. It's important for our commuters to get in and out of New York City in a safe, friendly way. So I think it's important for us to have a real conversation, but looking at the financial analysis overall to figure out what we're finally going to do in that plan. And the traffic study. I had 10 seconds, though.
I think this is a very serious issue that will affect our fourth ward, especially with regards to traffic. I am glad that Hoboken would be getting the flood protection measure that it needs. That's a big win. The fourth ward was inundated with storm surge from the Hudson River by the way of Longslip in 2012, Superstorm Sandy, and this would help us with that. I think it's imperative that the New Jersey Jersey Transit makes the necessary upgrades to the terminal, but these upgrades cannot come at the cost of out-of-scale overdevelopment that detract from our quality of life. I think for this plan to be successful, we need to understand the impacts to traffic, to our infrastructure, and to our city. The traffic engineer, I was also at the public meeting, mentioned that she would lie to us. Of course there would be traffic impacts, and of course the traffic would get worse. So I'm happy to see that the scope of the project was shrunk, but I look forward to a lot more community input into this. I know My opponent sits on the subcommittee, and they brought this to a second reading without any public input. The plan has significantly changed from 5 years ago, and we, as the residents, need to be involved in this. I understand that it's an important issue, but we have to get this right. We only have one shot.
It continuously amazes me how during an election season, everyone can be in agreement. As it stands, this rail yard project cannot move forward. To be specific, I'd like to see maybe 10, 12 on a height restriction. I'd like to see more commercial for the tax base, as Mr. Ramos indicated. This has to be done right. The way it stands right now, no, absolutely not. Infrastructure, traffic, this vote will affect the entire city, as most votes do, regardless of your representing your constituents in your respective wards. Everything you vote, everything you do affects the entire city, period, end of story.
I have a funny feeling there are some more thoughts on this. Yes.
Just to respond to a couple comments that were made. First of all, the project hasn't shrunk. The project was around $2.5 million, $2.4 million in 2004, or sorry, 2.4 million square feet in 2014. It's still 2.4 million square feet. All they've done is said that there are 2 buildable buildings that total 1 million square feet that they want to start right away. Think of that as the goodies. They get to build the things that they want, and then later on they'll address whether or not they can build out over the rail yards. We heard the developer say, oh my God, we can't build over the rail yards. It will never happen. It's too complicated. But look at Hudson rail yards. That is exactly what they did. They built 10 million square feet over active rail yards. So for a developer to say it's not possible, we have the biggest example of how possible it really is. So this total project is 2.5 million square feet. And secondly, what they did say is it would take them 2 years before they even started. Rebuild by design is not at risk here. Rebuild by design is moving forward. The question is whether or not this project will.
Time. Anyone else? Yeah, Mr. Rosner's right. By Hoboken standards, this is downright cordial. Oh, okay.
I do, just for clarity there, if rebuild by design is being built no matter what, the rail yards, there is a big what next to the rail yards. They aren't connected at all. There's no financial connection. Rebuild by design is funded, and it is being built with or without the LCOR redevelopment plan.
Anything else?
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, there is a window of opportunity for this where all the state agencies involved are actually together to get this done. So the sooner the council, who's ever elected to the council, gets this done to make sure that we get into that window of opportunity, let's do it, but let's do it the right way. And by the way, the wall, that's a mitigating factor. If you have another Sandy, you're going to flood. It's just a mitigator.
Yeah, pretty peaceful.
One thing, 2 points. First of all, the Long Slip Canal is also being filled in as well on the southern border of New Jersey Transit property. And another thing we have to be cognizant of is the same day that this plan came out, I think the late September or mid-September, Governor Murphy also put out a plan regarding urban transit hubs throughout the state of New Jersey and how they're going to revitalize those areas with or without the local municipalities. So we need to have a seat at the table when this conversation happens going forward. Let's be cognizant of that. And New Jersey Transit is an agency that unto itself, basically, and they control their land, so we really need to have a seat at the table. So this is the best way to get everyone together and try and figure out what our needs are, what their needs are, and what we want to tolerate, basically, to go there. But the one thing we all want to see, we agree on, is redoing the Lackawanna Plaza.
Okay.
I would just like to add, yes, I do agree with that. However, I think that we can't sacrifice us residents and what we want for our city because it's an opportune time. I am in favor of moving forward, but it has to be the right plan. It can't be, we only have 6 months to do this, let's just make a decision. We have to study the results of the traffic study, the infrastructure effects, and how this will affect our city as a whole. Once it's built, we can't unbuild it.
All right, very good. Bob?
So, 4, 3, 2, 1. Do my new sort. So this is also kind of a bit of a tradition and a moderator privilege. Ms. Cricko-Powell, what is your favorite restaurant in Hoboken?
Well, my favorite restaurant used to be my grandma's house. My current favorite restaurant,
Yeah, just a quick answer we're looking for here.
I
Not,
like Zafra.
okay. Mr. Rosner, your favorite restaurant?
It's not in my ward, but Antique is pretty solid.
Okay. Ms. Fisher, your favorite restaurant in town?
I'll be honest.
What? I would say Bin 14 because they have an extensive, delicious gluten-free menu.
Okay. Ms. Giacchino?
I'm going to have to go with what I pretty much always go with, Mario's Pizza, because I have 3 teenage boys.
Okay. Ms. Springle?
Also not in my ward, but Empanada Cafe.
Empanada Cafe, yes, it's delicious. Ms. Martinez Dibenedetto?
I'm sorry.
You'd be hard-pressed to pass a weekend without seeing me at Hudson Tavern for a chicken sandwich and a whole garden.
Okay. And Mr. Ramos on the restaurant question?
It has to be Leo's. I've been eating it since I was in my mom's belly.
Okay. All right. Actually, we can have a round of applause for the restaurant. That's good. That was good. What do you have? What do you have? A rebuttal? You have a restaurant rebuttal?
I have a rebuttal. I've eaten at every one of those places.
All right. Here we go. Now back to the cards. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And Mr. Rosner will be first with this. And it's a bunch of cards about cars, parking, loading zones, double parking, car safety, curb space at a premium. Are you willing to, reallocate dedicated curb space from car storage to loading zones, etc.? A whole bunch of parking and car questions. Answer as you see fit, Mr. Rosner.
So what's the question?
The question is, well, some believe that cars should be de-emphasized in town to encourage more walking and scooters. Others feel that we should add more parking to make it easier for people that rely on cars. Do you have a position on that?
I guess let me start with cars. You're not going to ban cars, at least not in my lifetime. If you get electric vehicles and I'm still alive, God help me, that would be wonderful. This way you don't have the carbon footprint. I'm for bike lanes in the appropriate locations. I'm not sure about the protected bike lanes. We already had one on Observer when the cars were parked inside. All that has changed. The cars are parked outside now, and the 2 bike paths one going east, the other one going west on the walkway. My God, it's the size of the Autobahn. Was it really necessary? So that's one. Well, some people do, some people don't. That's your absolute right to agree or disagree. Parking, I think we should have painted areas for parking, whether it's a mini car or a Cadillac. It should be the same spot allocated so that people don't take up 3 spaces. That'll free up plenty of spaces. That's for the parking. Again, e-scooters. In fact, it just came to mind, the Washington Street, those green stripes that for the bikeway, when it's wet, it's slippery. And what are we going to do during the winter? I'm not anti-bike. I mean, I have a bike. But you've really got to allocate the resources where there's a compromise for everyone that can live with. You're not going to make everyone happy, but it's a hell of a lot better than having everyone angry at you.
My turn again?
Ms. Martinez Dibenedetto.
The reason why no one uses the bike lane on Observer Highway is because it's not connected to anything else. So we need more protected bike lanes, not less. And I think curbs should be dedicated to scooter and bike storage. I never want to see a scooter parked on a sidewalk, ever, ever, ever. I believe that any new garage that's built should have a plug for electric cars. It seems like a no-brainer. I don't know why we don't do that more. And I will fight for the building of the the municipal garage that's set to happen adjacent to the Northwest Park, because nothing gets me more angry than when we get an email that says it's going to snow and you should move your car to 2nd and Hudson. I live on 12th Street.
So the overriding question is the thought on cars, have less, more. I think the biggest challenge that we have for Hoboken is our future population growth and what comes with that. And again, this gets back to what's the right development for Hoboken and making sure we get it right. If we let the developers build all the luxury high-rise residential in the world, we're just going to see a lot more cars, a lot more just cars on our road. And I think we need to, this is why there's an argument for building commercial, another argument for building commercial, so we have less cars competing for spaces and going through our town at the same time we are. And we should think about having reduced parking ratios in areas, whether it's close to the path or in the northwest corner, anywhere near a transportation hub. If you build it, they will come, and we really need to encourage more people just not coming to town with cars, because if our population grows by 20,000 people and we have 6,000 more cars, just imagine that, right? 6,000 more cars on the roads in Hoboken, and it's just untenable. So we do, the city has kind of lacked a strategic approach to all of this. They've done it in pieces. They did a bicycle plan, never implemented. They have a parking plan, never implemented. And we really need to kind of put it all together and sit down and come up with what is that right mix. I would agree that the north end in particular needs a municipal garage. We need to have something like perimeter parking so that people who don't use their cars every day have a place to leave it, off the streets. So
I feel like parking is the third rail of Hoboken politics. So I would like to discourage people who move to town from bringing their cars with them and using our streets as sort of public parking by raising the annual fee from $15. I'd like to do what they do in West Hollywood, which is they charge annual parking fees on a sliding scale contingent on your income. So our seniors on a fixed income and our low-income residents would still be paying $15, but our hedge fund managers who live in multi-million-dollar brownstones would pay maybe $200 a year. I agree with Nora that scooter and bike storage is a necessity if we're going to encourage more people to ride their bikes. Having spent some time in Amsterdam, I think that we could look at the bike storage that they have there and scooter storage they have there. I would also like to have more protected bike lanes, and I'd like to add some shuttles to the Hop, because the Hop is amazing. A lot more people use it. It's packed every single time I take it, and I think it keeps people from driving.
I am a huge fan of loading zones, in particular in residential neighborhoods. About 18 months ago, I brought this up with the city council, and not everyone was on board, so I said, let's start in my neighborhood so I can take the brunt of the pushback if there is any. And there was a little bit of pushback at first, but surprisingly, everyone really enjoys having loading zones in the neighborhoods now. You're dropping your kids off at home in the middle of the day, or in the middle of the day, you have a spot to go. You go to the supermarket, you're coming home with groceries, you have a spot to go. You're picking up an elderly relative, you have a spot to pick them up in. And the beauty of them is, for those people who commute to and from work by car, at 6 o'clock, they have a parking spot overnight. I'm also for reducing the parking ratio in large buildings. I do agree that $15 a year is a little bit ridiculous to be able to park on our streets for $15 a year, but I would like to see the price based on the size of your vehicle, which my vehicle is very large, so again, I'll be taking the brunt of it. But I don't see why someone who's driving a smart car should be paying the same amount of money as someone who's driving an SUV.
One thing I'm glad we've done the last 4 years is in the new Southwest redevelopment plan, we made perimeter parking a priority within that plan, and that'll be located on Harrison Street. And the Northwest parking garage in the park, that parking garage is fully funded. already. So it's going to happen. It's fully funded. We believe in the perimeter parking plan. So the perimeter parking plan has one item fully funded, and hopefully the next one will be fully funded as well. And I think that will be based on that developer's future development plans for that site. As far as protected bike lanes, I believe that you could go around where they're appropriate. I think we look at New York City right now, and the firefighters recently put out a study where they're having a difficult time getting their apparatus, their ladder apparatuses, to the buildings that are in danger, that have fire, that have termination going on the rooftops of their buildings as well. So access has become a huge problem for the New York City Fire Department. We have extremely narrow streets in the city of Hoboken. If we push that out a little bit further, our fire apparatus is going to have the same exact problem they have in New York City. So we want to avoid that by any means necessary. Parking, it's a daily way of life in Hoboken. It's something we deal with on a daily basis. No one's really going to get rid of their vehicles. We could ask them all they want. I work in Paterson, New Jersey. I know a lot of people that commute in and out of Hoboken. The biggest thing we need to do is alleviate traffic congestion in Hoboken, New Jersey. And that's why I'm working with Jersey City, Hudson County, and the city of Hoboken to try and connect Patterson Plank Road through Hope Street to Cole Street to help alleviate the access points in the southwest portion of Hoboken.
I think that parking is always a hot button issue. I think it's a question at every debate. I agree we're not getting rid of cars anytime soon, but I think with regards to parking, we need to take a holistic approach. I think that we need to include bike lanes. I think that we definitely have to locate them in the right places. We have to look at including loading zones into this. I think we need to talk to businesses and residents. There needs to be resident involvement in this issue, and we have to get it right. We need to study everything at once. I like the idea of perimeter parking. I'd also love to see the HOP coordinate with some of the garages, expand the HOP service, and then potentially use that to bring residents to the businesses during weekends instead of having people look for parking. They know there's a guaranteed shuttle. So I do think that it's a tough issue, but I think if we look at it in an overall approach with bike lanes and reducing traffic, of course. I mean, rerouting Patterson Plank Road is one of the reasons I got involved in this. So I think would love for that to happen. I live on Patterson. The traffic there is a nightmare.
Any rebuttals on this, Mr. Rosner?
I just want to make it clear I'm not anti-bike lane. Okay, that's number one. I'm for anything that increases mobility in this city without a vehicle, but you're not going to get rid of the cars, as Ruben and I said. I did my own traffic study the other night because I'm on the Nixel, and they were comparing the 9th Avenue by the bus, that whole stretch with the protected bike lanes and stuff. So I stopped at the bus terminal. It was, I guess, about 6:30, 7 o'clock, and I did my own personal traffic study. There were 17 bikes in the bike lane. There were approximately 323 vehicles jammed up because of the traffic. There's no balance. We need balance.
Anyone else? Yes, Mrs. Giacchino.
I am not a fan of perimeter parking. It just doesn't work. The city has been talking about it probably for decades, but anyone who drives knows they are not going to park in the perimeter of town, even if there's a shuttle bus to get them to their home. Everyone wants to be parked on their street. It's just some weird psychological thing. If there's not a parking garage within 4-block radius of you, there's no way you're using it. And the holistic approach to all of this has to be thinking about cars. It has to be thinking about pedestrians, bike, scooters, skateboards. All of it has to be thought of at the same time. Am I a fan of bike lanes? I've always supported bike lanes, but it's not just bike lanes. It's bike lanes, it's parking, it's pedestrian safety. All of it has to be approached at the same time, or someone's going to get left out.
Anyone else? Yes, Mrs. Fisher.
So I have a different view about perimeter parking, but the concept of taking a holistic approach, one of the things that we've never done as a city is really looked at both the private sources of parking as well as the public sources. We actually do have, and Councilman Giacchino and I have talked about this before, and we always point to this one garage that's on the west side of Hoboken that is empty most of the time. Well, first of all, the west side of Hoboken is not yet fully developed, and people just, it's not as an inviting place to be. This is northwest Hoboken. But there's no way for anyone to know where all the parking choices are. And one of the things that we really need to do is actually market parking to people so they're aware of what all the choices are on a joint basis, not just putting up our municipal garages, but also including the private ones, so every resident in Hoboken understands what the choices are. So I actually think over a period of time, if a more affordable option for parking were available, a little bit further away and someone didn't use their cars, like a lot of my friends that live in New York City, that I think that maybe there is an opportunity to take some cars off of the streets and do that. So.
Okay, that's it, I guess. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Bob didn't tell me we could just ask random questions to liven it up. So right to left, what's your favorite color? Favorite color?
Blue.
Purple.
Purple. Orange.
Green.
Aqua.
Red. Red.
All right, very good, very rich and informative. So, back to the policy stuff. So, there's a lot of questions tonight about the businesses, specifically on Washington Street. So, let me put it to you guys like this. There is a lot of questions, again, about small business in Hoboken. So, if elected, what would you do to try to bolster or attract business to Mile Square City, if any plans or initiatives that are part of your campaign at the moment?
I'm all in favor of the SID. We need to really see if we could do something with that. We need to attract businesses into town, mom and pop stores. At a prior debate, I mentioned Sephora. I don't know why Hoboken needed a Sephora. I'm sure the landlord did. It's basically a giant advertising vehicle. I work in New York on 47th Street where there's a giant Sephora. I don't know if the town Sephora here is corporate or franchise. I'm not sure. I apologize for not investigating that. But and if there's a Sephora there, that's fine. But you do realize if it's a corporate store, not one person walks into that store a whole year, it's still favorable for Sephora. And I love Sephora. My kids love Sephora. I mean, it's great. But we really have to investigate how we can get businesses, small incentives for small businesses to come in and work to get that done. I mean, this is all part of quality of life. It's always been quality of life since I've lived here. Every year it's quality of life, and some of the quality gets better, some of the quality doesn't. And this is what we have to do. We have to attract business here. And I agree with the SID. I think it's a good idea. We really need to see how we can get that forward.
So I'm glad Frank mentioned the Special Improvement District. This has been a passion of mine for the last few years. Since the beginning, when I was on the City Council, I quickly recognized that we really just didn't have an economic development focus. And I sat down as we were contemplating the start of Washington Street and said, we need to make sure that we're protecting our businesses through the entire project, but that wasn't a priority of the administration at the time. The good news is the second this mayor, our current Mayor Bala, was elected, one of the first pieces of legislation that we put through is hiring someone to help us determine if we could have a special improvement district, which is effectively, when you think of every economically flourishing area of Jersey City, those are all special improvement districts. I've been on the steering committee. Mayor Bala asked me to be on the council representative on the steering committee. I've worked with a steering committee of 18 local commercial and business owners for the last 2 years. We had the council passed 8-1 this summer to establish a special improvement district, and we're going to come before the council at the next meeting with the budget, and that will allow us to actually fund a special improvement district. Some of the things that special improvement district will do are things like make it easier to work with the city to find a way to make it easier for businesses to open, centralize information about rents, et cetera, so that tenants actually have a chance and a level playing field, work with the city on parking initiatives to be able to attract more people to Hoboken, and just generally have an advocate for our businesses that will be a partner with the city to figure out a way to support our businesses even further. And I'm on the board of the Special Improvement District.
Councilman Ramos.
I'd like to thank Councilwoman Fisher. It's been a pleasure working with her with the Special Improvement District the last 2 years, and she's been leading that effort with all our business owners, because we're not doing a very good job of advertising what all the things we have to offer, and the CID will help us do that. We think we just spoke about the last conversation we had was regarding the perimeter parking. So we have these two great opportunities in northern and southern portions of Hoboken, because a lot of times where I have coworkers or colleagues and friends that live out of town, they say how extremely difficult all these things are. And we made an extremely bad experience. Every time they see Hoboken on TV a couple of years ago, it's like, my God, I got my car booted. Car booting in Hoboken is out of control. Ticketing in Hoboken is out of control. We have to make the visit into Hoboken pleasurable, because the businesses in Hoboken cannot survive on Hoboken residents alone. We wish it could, but it will not. So we have to make our town fun for other people to visit again, engage our community, educate our potential businesses and what we have to offer in town and what the process is for them to go from A to B as far as the application process, the zoning process, and all the things they need to do to get the proper permits to open their business. So hopefully the next couple of years we'll get that done going forward. And can we please raise the lights up a little bit, because it's really messing up my eyes right now. Thank you.
The CID really has the ability to change the perception of shopping and dining in Hoboken. And once that happens, I do think that businesses will have an easier time flourishing. Sephora, I shop at Sephora, and on my way to Sephora, I stop at Washington General Store. So I do think that having a few anchor stores like that on Washington Street actually is a good thing, because it gets people out to them, and on their way there, they will stop at other stores. But really, our businesses flourishing goes back to commercial development. Everything goes back to development. Without having people here to shop in our stores during the day and to eat in our restaurants, the businesses just cannot succeed. It's important that future development going forward, we really focus on commercial development.
I would echo a lot of what was already said. I think conceptually the Special Improvement District is a great idea. I know that it's worked very well in other cities, and I think it's a great way to engage the business community the way they want to be engaged, and it's a true partnership between the city and the business communities. I agree that we have to make it easier for businesses to open. We have too many vacant storefronts on Washington. And just recently, in the last 6 months, in the 4th Ward, we had 3 businesses close. So I think when residents are asking me, how do we bring a Sobsies down to where the Whole Fresh just closed, one of the areas of this and one of the pieces I think is missing is the resident input. As residents, we definitely want to support our small businesses. So I think that we should have a small part in hearing our voices on the Special Improvement District.
So I think that there's not one solution to the small business issue. Having grown up here, I remember when Washington Street was filled with mom and pop stores and we didn't have a whole lot of empty storefronts. I think that the CID is a great start, and I would love to work with the CID to develop programs that help with everything from niche marketing to grants and loans for small business owners. I want to make it easier for businesses to open by having a small business liaison in City Hall whose job is to guide small business owners through the permitting process. I want to fill empty storefronts fast by using a pop-up program similar to the one that is used successfully in Austin, Portland, and Oakland that will enable small business owners to sort of workshop their ideas, see if they're viable, and it will also fill empty storefronts fast, and it'll provide commercial diversity on Washington Street that we really need. On that note, I think that we should be using zoning and land use restrictions to put more thought into what chains we do allow in town. I know that in a study in Chicago, mom and pops give 68% of their income back to the community, where chain stores give 40%. I would like to encourage, I don't want a CVS to open 800 feet from Willow Pharmacy, which has been open since 1921. I think we have to put a lot more thought into what we're allowing on Washington Street. I also want to have 20-minute parking in front of businesses that are off Washington Street so that people can pick up, drop off, and support businesses back there.
I would love to see some of that SID money heading to 14th Street in the second ward, which when I was a kid was a really vibrant commercial area. Every night after dinner, my parents and I would go for a walk on 14th Street, and there was like guys out playing dominoes and stores open, and now it's kind of just like a disjointed mess over there, and it should be a destination for Uptown Hoboken. I agree with Kristen that I would love to see someone in City Hall working with small businesses. I think we all remember a couple of years ago when like 6 falafel stores opened in 6 months. That didn't work out for anybody. So there's no reason why people should be pouring their life savings into something that isn't going to be moving forward. We need to make sure that we have input from City Hall working together with the small businesses.
All right, I saw Councilwoman Giacchino already had a rebuttal.
That person in City Hall that will help small businesses navigate will be the SID. The SID will help you understand, I want to open a nail salon on 6th and Washington. Well, just for your information, 3 more are in the works to open within a 2-block radius. The SID will be able to help you understand the finances it takes to open a new business. It'll help you understand the process, how zoning works, how the building department works, and that's one of the reasons I am very excited about the SID.
So just to respond to a couple comments. One is to Lisa's question. The residents are absolutely going to have a part of this. One of the initial initiatives is going to be to do a retail market analysis, and that's really having people on the ground and interviewing residents, visitors coming in, understanding what their shopping preferences are, why they come, what keeps them away, what would encourage them to shop more. If they don't shop in Hoboken, where do they shop? And it's very specifically going to be working with the community to actually get that input. So that's one. Second, to what Nora said for 14th Street, as of right now, and it'll be fluid, but the steering committee is really focused on kind of the low-hanging fruit and the most immediate and visual impacts that you'll see will be lower Washington Street and then up towards 14th Street. So I will hopefully be able to achieve that. And lastly, very quickly, we have a lot of tax pressure. We can't do a lot of extraneous hiring. I agree with Councilman Giacchino.
Time.
We need the SID to be that person that represents our small businesses.
Frank, I believe you have.
Yeah, one of the things that we did the last 4 years, we expanded the commercial business district to extend all the way down First Street to Patterson Plank Road, and we also did that on 14th Street as well. That would allow the process to be a lot easier to open your business and diversify the types of businesses that could go in those areas that weren't allowed before. And we also expanded it from 2nd to 5th and Jackson Street as well. So it's a lot of opportunities for businesses to expand they didn't have before, especially with the process that they'll have to go through. It'll be a lot easier.
Real quickly, as far as the SID and the empty storefronts, we also need to find out how we can speed up that process so that empty storefronts can be full. Again, depending on the entrepreneur or what they're doing, market forces are going to take care of whether they survive or not. But we still need to help that entrepreneur who's willing to go out and do that. And if I could wax nostalgic just for a second, I remember going to Maxwell's, and it was a tremendous music venue. Some of you still remember the old-timers, the new-timers. I'm not sure you do. I don't know really what happened there. I guess Fallon, the owner, just either let it go, or there was a loading zone problem with the bands coming in or not. We could have made an exception for that. If there's an entrepreneur out there that could bring that back, how wonderful would that be? And that's ancillary stuff for businesses for all along Washington Street.
Thank you. Anyone else? All righty.
Okay, coming over here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, Ms. Giacchino will be first. So I presume that all of us here are probably voters in Hoboken. Maybe there's some stragglers and interlopers. But for all of us who would be in Hoboken, there are two public questions that will be on the ballot. And the first question we'll be asking residents, and I'll ask the candidates to respond to this, with their positions on these. The first ballot question will ask residents about using the Open Space Trust Fund to be spent on both land acquisition and development of public parks. That's the first public question. The second question would increase the funds in the Municipal Open Space Trust Fund to include funds for historic preservation. So those would be two questions will be asked on the ballot. And so we are looking for your opinions as candidates on those questions. Ms. Giacchino.
So the first ballot question is, right now, any money that goes into the Open Space Trust can only be used for acquiring property. This would allow for the build-out of property. And we're fortunate to be getting to a point in Hoboken where we've acquired a lot of property for parkland, so I agree that we should be able to switch the money, change the way it's used around, and use money to build out. The second one adds historic preservation and adds 1 cent, and I am completely for that, but it is a misnomer that it is not an added tax. It is an added tax. It's just not going to be in the municipal levy. It will be taxed you through a different line item, so when you look at your tax bill, that will go up. But I am 100% supportive of both of these. I'm a yes vote.
I am going to vote yes on both questions.
I am also in support of both of these. I think, as Jen mentioned, the swap from 75% acquisition to 25% acquisition makes sense, given that we have most of the parkland that we want, and then that frees up 75% going toward the build-out. So I think that makes perfect sense. The second one, the increase for the historic preservation, again, I agree. I think it's a good cause. I think passing the Open Space Trust was why we have our Southwest Park today, as well as the Northwest Park, and I think those have transformed the western edge of our city, so I think it's good use.
I'm in favor of voting yes, yes. We're going to need that cash to finish our waterfront, to build out the park at the Union Dry Dock property.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Both questions are a reflection of our priorities. So obviously, we've made open space a huge priority the last 10 years, so I absolutely am in favor of that question. And we had an earlier conversation about historic preservation, so absolutely yes on that as well. So I'm looking forward to hopefully both of these passing, and hopefully we can work with our residents to move these things forward. Thank you.
So I'm going to go in reverse order. Definitely yes for the increase, in particular to include historic preservation. One of the things that we started this past year was looking at the restoration of Castle Point Terrace, the Yellow Brick Road, which is the most historic road in the city of Hoboken, as well as Court Street, which is the other most historic road in the city of Hoboken. And, it's going to be a project to do both. We looked to get some county funding, and the projects just weren't shovel-ready. We didn't have good budgets. So the fact that both of these now are going to potentially be able to be part of the Open Space Trust Fund, I think is a great win for the entire city of Hoboken. As it relates to, and as well as other historic preservation opportunities. As it relates to one, I'm a yes, but I'm a hesitant yes. And the reason why I'm a hesitant yes is The main reason we're doing this is because we're about to build out a $100 million park, and the majority of the funds that with this swap and being able to develop the park is the Northwest Park, which I think is great. I voted for, I'm supportive, I drank the Kool-Aid on, the resiliency. It's incredibly critical for our community. It's a beautiful park. However, my concern is that it takes the visibility away from the actual cost of improving that, because now all of the development costs move out of the municipal budget. So something to keep in mind. I'm definitely a yes, but we're going to have to continue to provide transparency to our community on both of these on a go-forward basis.
I don't think I can add to anything anyone else said. I'm a yes on both.
All right, any rebuttals on this? All right, seeing none. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ms. Fisher will be first.
Yes, we're on closing statements. You've been a lovely audience. Of course, that's easy because we have lovely candidates. So, of course, this is the last thing. You're allowed to react if you're so inclined.
So this is closing statements? Okay. Bear with me, but I'm going to read. So in my 25 years in Hoboken, I never expected I would become an activist or an elected representative in my community. But I can tell you that it has been incredibly fulfilling, and I've been so honored to serve all of you. Your willingness to engage with me on so many important issues has made a huge difference, from finally completing Washington Street, even keeping the historic bases at 11th, to being part of Rebuild by Design every step of the way and helping to design the new Harborside Park, to helping to advance pedestrian safety at multiple intersections across the Second Ward, and clearly all of your advocacy regarding Monarch and Union Dry Dock. It really does make a difference, and I could not be more proud. Our new Suez contract was a big personal achievement for me. After pushing back on what would have been a terrible deal for Hoboken, we were able to turn it around and save taxpayers over $30 million while still fixing our water issues. We have so much more to do over the next 4 years, including finally completing our waterfront, which is very exciting for me. So I look forward to continuing to serve you, and I hope to have your support on Election Day. Please vote 1C for me so I can keep engaging with, informing, and advocating for you.
Time.
So not my style, but it has me really disenfranchised and disheartened. So Kristen approached me a few weeks ago on the street, and she told me she was not going to run a negative campaign. As a matter of fact, she reached out to a mutual friend and told her the same. She was going to run a positive campaign. Well, she broke her promise because her mailers are negative with false accusations based on lies. This shows she's not in control of her own campaign, she's not independent, and she's not a woman of her word. If you vote for me, Jen Giacchino, you will get a woman of her word, a full-time, independent, consensus-building representative. Vote Jen again, 1C. Thank you.
Frank? Oh, I'm sorry. Some of you know me, some of you don't know me. Hopefully everyone in the audience does now, and out in social media land as well. I am the only candidate. I am living, walking proof that I don't need PAC money, I don't want developer money, I don't have any. I'm on the ballot and I'm running. Word of mouth, walking the street, getting the vote out. I am beholden to no one except you. Now, if I can get you emotionally involved, I'll get your head involved. And then we can work together, whoever's on the council, to get stuff done for this city. Again, I'm going to end every year since I've been here, it's quality of life. Let's keep doing that and make the quality better.
I'd first like to address Jen Giacchino's comment. I am keeping it policy related. I am not getting personal. the things that you thought of as negative attacks were policy that you supported on the council that I disagree with. This is not personal, it is policy. There are differences between you and I.
Please don't yell out. Please don't yell out.
I supported you and I voted for you, and I've been disappointed in some of the decisions that you've made, and I made that clear that these are the decisions that you made that I'm disappointed in. And I'm sorry that you find that negative, but it is not attacking someone to point out the differences between you. And if you think it is, then maybe you should have thought twice about making those decisions. I belong to many...
All right, 10 seconds, 10 seconds.
I belong to many different communities in Hoboken. I'm Old Hoboken, I'm New Hoboken, I'm a mom, I'm a public school parent, and I think that, and I hope that I can bring all of those communities together.
Time.
For years, my ward has been referred to as the Forgotten Fourth. And it's true that I feel our elected officials have often forgotten that the residents of the Fourth Ward matter as much as those who live closer to the waterfront. I feel like that again after tonight. But developers have never forgotten about our Fourth Ward. They see that as a cash cow, demanding out-of-scale development without regard to traffic, pedestrian safety, and other quality of life costs their project would impose on us in Hoboken, but especially us in the Fourth Ward. In my career, which didn't get to come up today, I'm an accountant, finance, and for the past 15 years, I ran a business in New York City, overseeing everything from budgeting, purchasing, negotiating contracts. So I feel as though I bring these to the table and I'm able to hold the line on spending. But most importantly, what I want to do is be a voice for the residents of the Fourth Ward. I have no other interest in this. I don't aspire to be a career politician.
In my opening statement, I listed a number of the accomplishments we've made the last 4 years. Now, our next 4 years going forward, we have a number of priorities that we want to see and check off those boxes as well, such as our PSE&G site, working with our community to make sure what the future of that site beholds for us. Pass and Plank Road, making sure that's connected to Cole Street is a priority for us. The Multi-Service Center, making sure that the necessary upgrades are met and enhanced. Continue to work with the HHA residents to make sure the RAD funding, the RAD housing continues to happen. It's happening at 311 13th Street in March. We want to make sure that happens throughout the ward and throughout the city. Going forward, we also want to see our new senior citizen complex happen within the city of Hoboken. Displacement and our seniors need to be a priority that's met for us. We need new schools. I visited all the schools the last 4 years, and throughout my life, they are all dilapidated. Whether you're a charter school or public school parent, you have needs that need to be met, and we need to meet those needs to rise to the occasion, to meet those needs, make sure our facilities are grade A #1. And finally, we're going to continue to pave our streets throughout the ward, so please vote Ruben Ramos 1C. Looking forward to representing you going forward in the future. Thank you.
The second ward is a microcosm of Hoboken. It's home to Old Hoboken and New Hoboken, 100-year-old brownstones, and shiny new riverside lofts. A cobblestone muse, exciting nightlife, and even throw in a museum for good measure. But what I love most is sitting on my stoop, just like my parents did before me, chatting with every neighbor that comes by, because I want to hear what they have to say about the next baby that's due on the block, or which neighbor got another parking ticket, or who is making the coquito this Christmas. Now, things have changed a little bit, and they've started asking me about the issues that are most important in the second ward. They've started asking me about pedestrian safety, and they've started asking me about the Monarch Project. And I'm ready to listen, and I'm ready to vote. Please, if you care about the second ward as much as I do, please come out and vote Nora on November 5th. Thank you so much.
All right, any rebuttals on closing? No, just kidding. No, just kidding. So give us 30 seconds, please, before you get up. So first, please tell your friends who weren't here they can watch the video of this on the Hudson County View website or Facebook page.
Both. It's on Facebook right now, but it'll be on the website tomorrow.
Facebook and the website Hudson County View. You all have friends that weren't here, so please tell them that. Number two, there's a reception happening like almost right now. It's going to be in the Babbio atrium, and there's going to be wine, right? Okay, so that's happening now. One last round of applause for the organizers, Hoboken QLC, and all of our candidates. And John. Thank you and good night.